Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident god of thunder. On this episode of Thor Talk, we'll be delving into Norse mythology and the newly released God of War game to see what God of War got wrong about the Thor from Norse mythology. All this and more on Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, prince of Asgard, and this world is under my protection.
So, before we begin, I think I must make it clear that this video is in no way to bash God of War. I got the game myself and I absolutely love it. It may be my favorite game released on the PlayStation 4 so far. That said, this game doesn't necessarily adhere perfectly to Norse mythology, which is absolutely fine, as Marvel's Thor doesn't either. But as I was browsing the web, I found that most people are taking this interpretation as the true Norse version of Thor, and that the Marvel version that we've been getting is a romanticized version of Thor. This isn't true at all. The main premise of the God of War games is that you play as Kratos, who is on a quest to kill the gods. The series originally began in Greek mythology, which provided a simplified reason to kill the gods. In Greek mythology, almost all the gods are tyrants, caring little for humanity, but still demanding sacrifices from them. Clearly, Kratos needs little incentive to want to kill these gods, but when the series made a jump to Norse mythology, it had a new problem. For the most part, Norse gods were relatively kind to humans. For reasons that I'll discuss later in the video, they often saw it as their duty to protect humanity from the Jotuns and other forces that wished to harm them. And the chief protector of mankind, and the gods themselves, was Thor, god of thunder. Knowing how disappointed players would be if they were robbed of the chance to kill our favorite gods from Norse mythology, they changed them a bit to fit a more malevolent narrative. The stories and even the gods themselves were changed. Thor, who was once the good-natured protector of mankind, was now a psychopathic murderer who would kill any giant to cross his path without a second thought, and gleefully enjoy it as well. To give you an idea of how things were changed, we'll go through a story presented by God of War, and then through the actual Norse myth. In the story presented by God of War, Odin was wandering throughout Midgard and found a particularly stupid and gullible giant named Hrungnir. Odin was so amused by the giant's stupidity that he invited him to Asgard for the gods to laugh at him. Odin gets Hrungnir drunk and intentionally goads him into saying that he will destroy Asgard and take all their women. Thor then arrives, and he is less than amused. He bashes in the clueless giant's head without a second thought, and the gods continue to laugh. In the actual myth, Hrungnir is no buffoon, but a mighty warrior. His name literally means brawler. Odin encounters him and challenges him to a horse race to see whose steed is faster. Odin wins the race, and then invites him to dine with him in Asgard as a friendly gesture. Hrungnir accepts and drinks from Thor's own horn, but he continues to drink until he becomes quite boastful, saying that he will destroy Asgard and take Thor's mother and wife to be his concubines. In some accounts, he even becomes quite violent. When Thor arrives, he is outraged, but will not harm him because he is Odin's guest and is unarmed. However, Hrungnir challenges Thor to a duel, which Thor gladly accepts. When the other giants hear of this, they decide that they do not want to risk Hrungnir losing to Thor, so they make a clay giant to help. In the end, Thor prevails by killing Hrungnir despite the giant's interference. There are many other accounts of Norse myths like this in God of War where the story has been changed to make the giants more sympathetic and the gods seem more evil. Thor didn't just kill giants, he also ate with them and even had children with the giantess. But yes, he certainly did kill many giants. He was known as the greatest giant slayer, the ultimate enemy of the Jotun. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. You see, the giants were the ultimate enemy of both mankind and the gods. The term giant isn't quite accurate when it comes to describing the Jotun. The term giant comes from the French word Giant, which replaced the term for Jotun around the 10th century. A more accurate term would not be giant, but devourer. The Norse believed in two states of mind that described the universe: Inangad and Utangad. Inangad is a state of mind that is law-abiding, civilized, and orderly. Meanwhile, Utangad is anarchaic, wild, and chaotic. Think of them as a type of yin and yang. The gods were part of Inangad, as they strove for civilization and believed in laws to keep civilization in check. Humanity was also a part of Inangad, as they remained civilized and followed laws set in place. It was for this reason that the gods saw humanity as their ally, and protected them from the Utangad of the Devourers. Whereas the gods seek order, the Devourers seek chaos. The gods are the protectors of civilization and humanity, whereas the Devourers are constantly trying to drag the universe back into chaos. Now, this may beg the question as to why the gods would feast with and even have children with the Devourers if they were their arch-enemies. Well, the Devourers weren't necessarily evil, and neither was Utangard. Utangard is a way of life that even some humans were encouraged to try. The trouble comes from taking it too far by destroying the lives of those who choose to live as Inangard. So, the point of this long tangent was to basically get across the idea that Thor did kill many giants, but it was to protect others, but the giants are also not entirely evil. Thor killed the giants to keep them in check, to stave off Ragnarok for as long as possible, when the giants would finally prevail in dragging the universe back into chaos. Thor is not this monster he's been portrayed as in God of War. The Norsemen looked up to Thor. They called on him for strength in battle. The thunderstorm meant their hero was off somewhere battling giants to ensure that they never got to them. When the deadly winter came, it was because the frost giants had come down, and all of humanity would suffer from the harsh Scandinavian cold. But spring came when Thor the Thunderer drove the giants back up the mountain. He was an extremely popular god, often exceeding Odin in popularity. He was a god of thunder, war, strength, and fertility. Thor was a good-natured god, who was known to have a taste for adventure, not necessarily the wisest of gods, but he always protects mankind. Really, if you boil down the key personality traits of Thor, he's much closer to his Marvel counterpart than he will ever be to his murderous God of War persona.
Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk. If you want to keep up with Thor Talk and all Thor-related news, follow Thor Talk on Instagram @ThorTalk. You can also keep up with and support Thor Talk by simply subscribing. Once again, I'd like to formally state that all art and videos owned by its respected companies, and I own none of it. With that said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where...
You'll behold in breathless wonder